Every superhero needs an origin story, and I want to start with Nick's origin story, which, if you've ever listened to the Full Disclosure podcast, James O'Brien's, or if you haven't listened to it, you should listen to it. It's worth listening to. Nick, you first got involved in campaigning while you were at school in the mid-'80s, partly after worrying the National Front would deport your mum, who's from Mauritius. How did that start you on this journey?
Yeah, thanks. And before I answer that, I just want to say thank you for everyone for coming. And I'll tell you why I say thank you, because it's nice to be amongst friends today. You know, I think after the weekend that we've had, to actually be amongst like-minded people, I was actually really looking forward to tonight, and I just wanted to say that. So anyway, my story. I mean, I got kind of brought up in a kind of small P political household. So we'd always watch the news. And I remember at the age of, I think I was probably 9 or 10, the National Front party political broadcast. I had no idea of how big or small they were. And I just saw this kind of man, John Tyndall, say that they were going to send everyone home who wasn't born in Britain within 6 months. And my mum was from Mauritius, and it completely horrified me, you know, and it kind of lived with me for a long time. We soon after, you know, it just, again, had no concept how big or small they were, but the idea that my mum was going to get sent home. And, you know, and I have to say, you know, there are many people who really suffered in the 1970s. I wasn't one of them, but I felt it, and I felt the fear. And it was always an issue close to my heart. And I think when we look at what's happened over the last couple of months, you know, talking to people who thought that racism, that daily racism was behind them, and it's back. And I think for me, you know, I got involved in politics, you know, 15, 16 years old, principally in the anti-apartheid movement. You know, I used to hitchhike down to London to join the anti-apartheid protest outside the South African embassy and things like that. But, you know, then I got involved in kind of left politics, but anti-racism and anti-fascism was always really close to my heart, and it's never left, really.
I think that obviously we've seen that threat evolve and change so much since the sort of initial days of the BNP and the bus journeys, and even the stuff that you're doing with Searchlight before. Your book opens with, actually, it's a really brilliant chapter, and I always forget that Nick was a journalist before this work, so you're a really good writer. And the first chapter opens with the story of, that could be something straight out of adolescence, basically, a story that you're involved with. Do you want to just tell us a bit about that story? Because I think it speaks to how the threats changed over the sort of intervening years.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I imagine most people saw the drama series Adolescence, and to me, how a lot of the media or a lot of the politicians reporting on it, it wasn't the same story that I read. You know, it wasn't about kind of, it was about a boy who was struggling, who was picked on, who looked to violence. And I think that we're living in a world where more and more young men are getting drawn to extreme violence. And I opened the book with a story about Lee. Lee isn't his real name, but he was 15 years old and he got radicalised during COVID. He was always kind of on the internet and probably exploring a bit more than most other young people were. But he got radicalised after the murder of George Floyd, where most of the girls in his school were obviously kind of fully supportive of the kind of Black Lives Matter movement. He reacted to that and went the other way. And within 2 months, he was talking about committing terrorist attacks. And that quick radicalisation. And I think one of the most interesting things talking to him was that, and I think it was a really poignant lesson, and part of the book is a challenge to us all, because, he was just saying being involved in the far right was fun. You know, he said the left lecture people, tell people you can't say this, can't say that. You know, and whether it's true or not, but that's how he felt. And he felt being obnoxious, being foul, getting a reaction from people, that made him feel special. And he joined an online community, a group called British Hands, which was actually other teenage boys who started talking about terrorism and whatever. And what was kind of, he reached out to me around Christmas time because he got convicted because of Hope Not Hate, because one of the Hope Not Hate researchers was inside this group, and we reported it. We did a story with the Sunday Times, and then the police got involved. A number of people were convicted, including this person. And he kind of says to me, when he first heard about us, and he hated us, obviously. We'd got him convicted, you know. Luckily, he was 15 years old, and so he wasn't sent to prison. He was too young. And he's managed to rebuild his life. But he hated us. And then he watched The Walk-In. And I've got some colleagues at the back of the room here who played a central role to stopping Rosie Cooper get killed. And he watched that, and he was partly intrigued by us, but also it dawned on him that actually we saved his life by doing what he did, that he was either going to end up dead or end up in prison. But I think for me what's kind of, I say challenging, because I think in the kind of anti-fascist world it's very easy to see things in a binary way, there's good and there's bad. Here was a young lad, 15 years old, who in the space of literally 8 weeks just turned the other way. And it's frightening how quick that happened, but it also just makes you think that actually there is a growing group, and I don't want to over-exaggerate it, and there's a lot of stories about, the young people are going to the right or whatever. Young people are overwhelmingly liberal, tolerant, open-minded, anti-racist, all the rest of it. But a small and growing group are becoming more politically aligned to the right, and it's just a speed of radicalisation, and it's the conspiracies that they're taking in. And it's also the link with violence and sexual violence as well. It's something that I'd never saw 20, 30 years ago. So, I found it a really interesting story, and just actually listening to this young person explain to me why he found it so exciting, I think is actually an interesting lesson for us all.
I think one of the reasons that I love working with Hope Not Hate is when you find out all the kind of detective work that goes into sort of bringing people to justice, even though sometimes the police are a bit slow to act on some of the info that you bring them. I also wanted to ask you about the story of how Hope Not Hate brought the organiser of the Southport Riots to justice, because I think that's like straight out of the pages of a detective novel, really. And I don't know if that person is here. Should we say who it is?
Who knows? But look, what I say, first of all, I just want to have an absolute shout out to the Hope Not Hate team here, because, and in a way, current and past Hope Not Hate people, because there's many of the people, we always say when someone leaves Hope Not Hate, you never leave, you're always part of the Hope Not Hate family. But and actually, I wrote the book, but it's partly their story as well. And what makes Hope Not Hate so special is the dedication of so many great people. And it's not just the staff; it's our long-suffering trustees and directors, and all our supporters and volunteers. But this case, so obviously everyone remembers the Southport Riots, unfortunately, and there was a Telegram group called Southport Wake Up that was doing a lot of the kind of organising. Online organising, promoting the trouble, calling for demonstrations, calling for mosques to be burnt down, calling for the Home Secretary to be hung, calling for me to be killed. And, this was the kind of it seemed to be the primary group that was organising stuff. Now, as it turned out, it was one of our researchers who identified the person behind that, and it's just worth a couple of minutes just explaining how that happened, because it as you say, it's straight out of a film. You wouldn't even believe it. Basically, there was a certain word that this person used, and one of our researchers had never seen this word spelt in a particular way before. Now we have a social media monitor that collects social media messages, billions and literally billions and billions of these things over the years, and we only found this particular spelling of a word in a number of accounts, which clearly, so very quickly became apparent, was connected to this one person over a number of years. And then he started going back through those, and he found a picture of a window. That several years ago, this person had taken a picture out of the window into his back garden, and there were a few identifiable things in the back garden. He literally then, I mean, it's just mental. He just literally went on the internet to kind of Google Maps or Google Earth or whatever. I mean, it's way beyond me, but he literally searched all of Merseyside till he found this bush in this garden. And you know, and then there was a car outside and all this stuff, and you know, it was just unbelievable. But that isn't all of it, really. So it was unbelievable. We later found out there was no police investigation going on because the police didn't know where this person was based, so there was no police force taking the lead investigating who this person orchestrating all these protests around the country were. I ended up taking a dossier into a police station in London, and I said, "This is the man you're looking for." And they look at me, and she goes, "Can you hang on a minute? I need to ring the boss." And they said, "He's not from London. I think you need to take this somewhere else." And you know what I mean? It was just utterly incredible. And you know, here was a man who was literally winding up, provoking, calling for people to be murdered, organising the demos, calling for mosques to be burnt down. He'd even been arrested on the night of the Southport protest, caught with a knife, and we again could prove that for those 6 hours he was held in custody. That, you know, on the numerous social media accounts he had, there was no posting on that time. And you know, so I have to say, you know, and that's just one of many similar stories, both from this researcher but our whole team. And you know, I'm just in awe of my colleagues, really. And just to say, in the end he pleaded guilty, 7.5 years. It was the second highest sentence for anyone. I mean, he should have got a lot more, really, for what he did. And he wasn't prosecuted for the threats to murder and you know, promoting terrorism or anything like that. But you know, it was a massive success.
To bring things back to now, I think I've spent most of this evening so far saying to people, "Hello, how are you?" And they've said, "Terrible." It's been like one of the worst weeks that we've had in a really long time. So could you first of all tell us, what do you think, where are we in the wake of obviously the shooting in America, a massive protest, maybe not as big as Tommy and his friends wanted, but still very, very big protest at the weekend, and obviously just kind of, you know, I'm working in a lot of reform communities at the moment, making some films. The things people are telling me about the kinds of abuse that they're getting just for walking down the road seems to be, we seem to have gone back a number of years, and things are accelerating very quickly. It feels a bit of an out of control clown car, you might say. Yeah, so firstly that, and then we'll talk about a bit of hope after.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think in all the time I've been involved, I can't remember a time when, let's put it politely, it's been more challenging as it is now. And I think that actually we need to be really honest about where we are, because we are sleepwalking into an absolute disaster. You know, and it's not just the fact that, you know, Nigel Farage could be Prime Minister. It's everything else that comes with it. You know, and when we think about the demonstration on Saturday, you know, I reckon 250,000 people, whatever it was massive. This was a movement to the right of reform. I mean, you know, it's incredible to think that, but this was a movement to the right of reform. This is the movement that forced Nigel Farage and Reform to announce that they were going to do compulsory repatriation for undocumented people, 600,000. A policy that, beginning of this year, he said was unrealistic and you know, not possible. He had forced into it by this movement coming up behind him. This movement is angry, it's racist, it's confident, and it's increasingly aggressive as well. And I think that, this summer, we've seen the hotel protest, we've seen the flag protest. This is, and look, lots of people I'm sure getting caught up in it or whatever, but behind it all, the people organising it, they don't care about the boats. I mean, on Saturday, I don't think there was a single speaker who talked about the boats. It's multiculturalism they oppose. It's Islam they oppose. It's conspiracies about the Great Replacement. I mean, this is fundamental. What they are talking about is far bigger. And I think what is making a lot of people depressed, and, is the fact that we've got an absolute failure of political leadership in this country. Where are our politicians, and not just Labour, but where are our politicians speaking out in defence of communities under attack, speaking out about multiculturalism in Britain as something positive? We're ceding the political ground, and I think certainly something I've seen this summer, and is people in the kind of refugee, asylum, migrant sector becoming increasingly worried, increasingly threatened, increasingly isolated, because they're being particularly targeted. And I think that at this moment, yes, we need the governments to do some stuff, but actually we all need to step up as well, because if we can't turn the tide in the next 12 months, we're not going to be able to turn the tide in 2 or 3 years' time, because it'll be too far down the line. And I just want to say my kind of final bit of doom before we go to the positive, but people need to look at what's happening in the US to see where this could go. Because Trump second term round is very different from Trump first term round. He is going on the offensive. They're targeting people. If they can't get them through legislation, executive orders, the courts, their MAGA movement is going after people. They're hounding people. They're hounding funders. They're hounding activists. They want to criminalise. They're sending literally troops into workplaces, into homes to arrest people. A Farage government will be far more right-wing than what they say now, if they actually have power. And I think that this is a wake-up call, because the thing is, we are still the majority of people. The majority of people still want a multicultural society. They still want, to live amongst different communities, different cultures. They want that, in a way, that great British tradition of fairness and decency and looking out for one another. But we are the silent minority. We are the silent majority at the moment. And we need to turn that around. And yes, we want other people to do stuff, and we want the government to do stuff or whatever, but we need to step up as well.
So I still want people to buy the book, but it's not who done it. How to defeat the far right? How are we going to defeat them? What's your plan? I hope somebody's got one.
Well, look, I mean, probably what I'd say is that, I mean, look, there is no easy solution, and many things have to happen. Many things have to happen, to address radicalisation amongst young men. Many things have to happen around, online hate. Many things have to happen in the communities. But I think what I try to draw out in the book is, in a way, the stories of hope. Because I do genuinely believe that when people get offered a choice, they choose hope over hate. And there is two things in the book. So there's an absolute correlation between pessimism, economic pessimism, and hostility to immigration. The intensity of hostility to immigration is highest in those communities that are most pessimistic and that have had the highest levels of multiple deprivation. I had a Guardian journalist ring me today, and he pointed out a fact in the book, and he was intrigued by it. So one of the things that we did, and I don't know if I've got any of the colleagues from Focal Data here, one of the things we do these huge polling, and then we can estimate opinion down to output area level. So that's 160 houses. So we've done it on a whole range of issues, but we did it on anti-Muslim sentiment. And what we found is that a third of the top 50 most negative output areas that got most negative attitudes to Muslims are in Nigel Farage's constituency, where the Muslim population is 0.4%. You know, that is the reality. So, but you see, I actually think that community is at the heart of a lot of things, because again, massive correlation. Where the far right are doing best is those places. It's not just about poverty, it's where hope has gone from communities, and the things that bonded communities together have gone away. And, you know, I talk about the coalfield communities in the book, because the largest single employer for men in the coalfield communities in Britain is warehousing. Now, many of that is zero contract hours, it's night work, it's shift work, it's a long way from where they live. At the same time, many women in those communities join the workforce after the strikes, and white-collar jobs, NHS, councils, more secure jobs, often higher wages. And at the same time, in those communities, what held those communities together, the clubs, the pubs, the high streets, they've all been destroyed. They've all fallen away. And so it's not just about jobs. Jobs are obviously important, but it's about the dignity of work. It's about communities and making, and again, the evidence is clear there. The more people feel part of a community, the less hostile they are to outsiders. Because, and these are fundamental points. So, look, there is no easy answer to this, but the fight back has to happen in the communities, and my colleagues from Bradford are over there. The work that they're doing in Bradford, and particularly Bradford South, we had a community fund day of 11,000 people at the end of July. I mean, this is just, years of hard work in that communities. But I think fundamentally the thing that we can all do, and we need to do collectively as well, and we need to kind of find ways to work together in ways that we haven't worked before. We need to defend the Britain that we love. Because if we don't do it, no one else is going to do it. And if no one does it, the right win. So it's all down to us. And sorry, I just want to abuse the mic one more. I just want to say a massive thank you to the Daily Mirror, right? Now, the Daily Mirror's not potentially a happy ship at the moment, and it's going through a lot it's going through a lot of turmoil. But the Daily Mirror have been with Hope Not Hate virtually the entire time, and often at times when most newspapers wouldn't touch kind of that anti-racist, anti-fascist campaigning. And the first meeting that Ros referred to, so Kevin Maguire's here, John Cuddiss is at the back somewhere. We had breakfast in the Cinnamon Club with the then editor, Richard Wallace.
Imagine that now.
Who was the former, I think, showbiz editor of the Mirror. Yeah. So we talked about this tour. We have a tour of the country. So his suggestion was to get a helicopter and then pop round certain communities. And Kevin, John, and I kind of looked at each other, trying to think, I'm not sure going into some of the poorest communities in the country, like Anneka Rice, dropping in a helicopter would actually be work. But to be fair, he accepted that. And the work that we've done with the Mirror over the years, and the work that we're still doing with the Mirror, has just been unbelievable. So I just want to say a massive thank you to Ros, especially Kevin and others.
I was just going to finish by saying that I can see there's so many amazing people here, and one of the things that Hope Not Hate does is to bring lots of different people together who are, in all sorts of different parts of, the progressive left and beyond. There's conservatives and all sorts of people involved in the movement. So thank you to everyone here for all the things that you're doing yourselves in your own different fields. Thank you for all the ears that you can collectively whisper in about this emergency and the solutions to it. I really hope you enjoy the book. At the end, Nick apologises to the trustees and board members of Hope Not Hate, many of whom are here today. I'm myself one. He says, managing me is unquestionably a thankless task. And I just want to say it isn't, Nick. So thank you. Thank you.